Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, Minnesota, we welcome you to another season of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting citizens of Minnesota. Now, here's your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to Your Legislators. My name is Barry Anderson. I'm your host this week. You may not have noticed it, but spring has sprung. We're celebrating that with the possibility that temperatures might break 30 degrees by the weekend. We're really looking forward to that. But you don't have to sit outside. You can be inside watching Your Legislators and taking this opportunity to communicate with the folks who represent you. And that's the reason for the catchy name. We want to invite you to call in your questions or send them to us via email. The instructions will appear on the bottom of your screen. This is your program, and we invite you to let our distinguished panel of guests know what's on your mind and what questions you have. A couple of housekeeping matters. Next week's program will be recorded. We will not be live, but we will be with you at all of our regularly scheduled times whenever you happen to see us. Our guest next week will be Myron Franz, who's the Commissioner of Revenue for the state of Minnesota. So we'll be talking about budget-related issues. We'll be talking about revenue-related issues. And if you have questions about those areas, send them in to us between now and next Thursday, and we'll see that we get them to the Commissioner, and we'll have a great program and an opportunity to learn about a different facet of government. We've done this in previous years as we enter the Easter week. One year we had the state demographer and the state finance director on, and it really is a slightly different take on public policy. So we hope that you'll be able to participate with us next week. I also want to remind you that our focus on these programs is on state policy, not on federal policy. So if you want to debate the drone policy or you're concerned about what we should do about Social Security, those are great questions. Our panel's not well suited to answer them. And finally, just a quick note that we will be with you each week from now until whenever the legislature goes home. With all of those housekeeping matters out of the way, let's move to the introduction of our panel who will help us unravel the mysteries of St. Paul. We have a veteran panel with us tonight. They've been with us. Each one of them has been with us in the past. And we begin, to my immediate left, District 10A from Baxter, Representative John Ward. Representative Ward, we're delighted to have you back. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Barry. It's my pleasure and honor to be here. And I'm in my fourth term, represent District 10A, as you said, which is most of Crow Wing County, Brainerd, Baxter, Nisswa, Breezy Point, Pequot Lakes, Jenkins up north in God's country up there where we have so many wonderful lakes and golf courses and have a beautiful, beautiful area that we've been blessed with. I'm in my fourth term, as I said. I sit on the committees I sit on right now. I'm the vice chair of the Capital Investment or the Bonding Committee. I'm on Public Safety. I am on Jobs and Economic Development and the Legacy Committee. And then I'm also on Rules. So I'm an assistant majority leader and pleased to be here with the rest of the panel tonight.
You don't get away without me identifying for the viewers your background with adaptive sports for the cognitively and physically impaired, programs that you and I both have an interest in. Tell our viewers a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you. And I was an educator for 34 years and a coach during most of those years. And one of the favorite sports that I participated in and coached in was the adapted floor hockey team. And Justice, as you know, the last floor hockey team state tournament was just last weekend. And so I started the Brainerd Adapted Floor Hockey program for the Brainerd School District. We're the only team north of the metro for adapted sports. And during my tenure, I had a very wonderful career in that, and was very fortunate to have great kids and parents that I worked with in that program.
A great opportunity for our young people. Also joining us, a frequent guest, District 51 from Eagan, Senator Jim Carlson. Senator Carlson's been here, and then he wasn't here, and now he's back. Tell our viewers a little bit about your journey.
Well, some people say I can't make up my mind whether I want to be in the legislature or not. But I was elected in 2006 in the district that covers Egan and Burnsville. It's Senate District 51. We lovingly call it Area 51. So it's, it has some historic value and some intrigue. But I was elected in 2006, and then I was retired involuntarily in 2011, and then came back again in 2012. So this is my second four-year term, and fortunately I didn't experience being in the minority in those 2 years. But it's been very interesting. It's been very interesting coming back.
And your background before you went in the legislature?
Well, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I worked in town here at Ecolab, and then I retired from 3M after working there for 20 years. So it's been a nice journey. I spent, I look at myself as being a Dilbert at heart, being in a cubicle and then having to become an extrovert when you start door knocking and get involved in politics.
Well, very good. We're delighted that you could join us. Joining us for the second time this year, Senator Carla Nelson from District 26 in Rochester. Senator Nelson, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Barry, it's great to be back. I live in Rochester. I represent the cities of Stewartville, Chatfield, Dover, Eota, and the 14 townships around Rochester. So I have a nice urban and rural district. I am a former teacher in the Rochester school system and a small business owner in Rochester. My husband and I own Olmsted Financial Group, and I have insurance and financial planning.
All right, very good. We're going to talk a little bit about some projects in Rochester that have had some press, but we're going to go to some questions from viewers first, and we'll come back to that. And finally, from District 16B, Hanska, Representative Paul Torkelson, who has the great honor and good fortune to represent my mother-in-law. So, Representative Torkelson, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Barry, and it's my pleasure and privilege to represent your mother-in-law. I hope she's watching.
She's supposed to be.
Keeping an eye on you and make sure you're behaving as mother-in-laws do. I serve 16B, which is a new district to me, and I actually have a new home. Redistricting didn't treat me very well. If I would have stayed on my farm and run from my farm, I would have been head-to-head with Tony Cornish, and that was not a comfortable spot to be in. So my wife and I bought a new home on the lake in Brown County, and I'm really ran in what was mostly my old district, plus some new territory in Redwood County, plus a couple of townships in Renville County. So got some new territory, but a lot of old familiar territory, had a great campaign and a good election. So now I have my official residence on the lake, and I have my vacation home back on my farm in Watonwan County.
All right. Well, very good. Well, let's go to some specific questions from viewers. I want to remind viewers, if you call in with a question about House or Senate file, we have really smart panels on this program, but they don't have the numbers memorized. So it's really helpful if you'll tell us, if you have a question about House File 817, you tell us what it's about. All right. Viewer from New Brighton wants to know what happened to the snowbird tax and all the changes about tax policy that the governor proposed, and is that likely to be something that will survive this legislative session? Who knows something about that and wants to take a run at it?
Unfortunately, it's still in the governor's budget. So I certainly don't support that. I think that will be disadvantageous to the state. I hope that's one of the taxes that that comes out of that budget. I think, we've got folks who spend part of their year here and then they go somewhere south for a few months, and now it's like the snowbird tax is just going to chase them all the way out. And so I'm hoping that that's one of the ones that the DFL majorities in the House and Senate do not support.
Senator Carlson, your thoughts on that?
Well, I have mixed feelings on it. First of all, I have to say that I am a big supporter of the governor's budget in that it is a total solution that we haven't had for a long time. We have problems with revenue and expenditure balances. And whenever we have something that we don't like, I'm hoping that we could find something to replace it, because we can't continue to borrow the way we've been doing it. We have our obligations that we need to meet. We need to pay back the schools. We need to make sure that we don't get forced into pawning any more of our ongoing revenues, like our tobacco tax settlement. So I think I don't care for taxing people who don't live in the state, But I think what we need to do is we need to be sure that whatever we take out, we put something else back in.
Representative Ward?
Well, Barry, the fact of the matter is, and I agree with Senator Carlson, the fact that the governor's budget has a long-term, stable approach that's visionary and with real money, and we haven't had that for a decade. So, but there are pieces that are problematic in all the budgets, and right now the House has come up with our budget in the majority, and the Senate has come up with their budget in the majority, and the governor has tweaked his budget from initially, and so. That's what happens is now the true negotiations begin once we have heard the February forecast. So, but the other thing that I really like about the House budget, and it kind of lines up with the governor's budget as well, is that it lists the priorities of investments of education and job creation and property tax relief and local government aid. And so, those are critical components of a budget that I think we need to move forward to invest in the state of Minnesota.
Your thoughts, Representative Torkelson?
Well, I don't know a lot about the details of snowbird tax, but I'm pretty sure I don't like it. The good news here today in Minnesota is that our economy is recovered and is continuing to recover. Things are getting better. We've seen each revenue forecast come in a little more positive than the last one. That's really good news. If we would just stay the course, we would actually get into a surplus situation in not too long a period of time. The governor's chosen to raise a lot of taxes and do a lot more spending. I just don't think that's appropriate at this time. We need the private economy to continue to recover so that it provides those private jobs, and it's those private jobs and people's incomes that really support the things that we then can afford to provide with state government.
For viewers who are wondering what the snowbird tax proposal is, just very briefly, it's my understanding that we already have rules in place regarding how long you can be out from Minnesota and not incur Minnesota taxes. This would add some additional restrictions to that period. So it's still in the budget, I think. I think we determined that, and so we'll have chances to talk about it between now and the end of the legislative session. Viewer from St. Paul wants us to talk about wants the panel to discuss. The differences regarding the Department of Human Services budget. Now, the viewer notes that the governor's plan was to increase DHS spending. There are other proposals to cut the DHS spending. The viewer's concerned about that, wants to know what the panel thinks about it. Who has somebody here have something want to talk about that? Representative Ward?
Well, in the House budget, again, we talk about a balanced approach in the budgets, no matter whose budget it is, and the fact is, for the last decade, how we've solved our budget in the state of Minnesota is like 76% of our budgets have been done with short-term accounting gimmicks, and 18% has been done through cuts, and 6% is revenue. That's a not real balanced approach. So, you try to use a balanced approach. I believe in a balanced approach to provide stability and a structurally sound budget moving the state forward. In our House budget, there is $150 million worth of cuts into DHS, to the DHS, and that is problematic from the standpoint that that area has been significantly hit in the last decade as well, and that's our senior citizens, our disabled community, our elderly, those really needing our help in the state of Minnesota. So it is problematic because we've got nursing homes that in greater Minnesota for sure are at a critical point, and our hospitals, and so even though we have $150,000 of cuts in our House budget, and again, that's a budget that has some revenue, has some cuts, has some reform and redesign. But I'm hoping that through looking at effectiveness and efficiencies and reform and redesign in that DHS budget, that we're able to not significantly hurt those people that have been so greatly impacted in the previous budgets.
Representative Torkelson?
Well, building a budget is about setting priorities, and I don't think the DFL has done a great job of setting priorities in this case. You mentioned nursing homes, Representative Ward. Many of my small towns, and I have 19 towns in my district, in many cases the nursing home is the largest employer in town. And because of the way our funding is set up for our nursing home folks, they've been unable to give their workers raises. They don't offer much for benefits because their budgets are severely restricted. And I wish that our nursing homes and our folks that work at group homes had been a priority in this budget. And apparently they're not. I'm going to keep pressure on to try and get some more money to these folks. To me, it's one of those things that should have been a priority and was not selected as a priority in this case.
Senator Carlson?
Well, Representative Ward is correct that there's $150 million that's we have a minus sign before it, and I think that for the most part, this is a start again. There's a lot of negotiation that has to happen, and we know that these are not final numbers; they're targets, and I also agree with both Representative Torkelson and Representative Ward that the nursing homes, the people that work in them, really deserve more attention. We've had many years of PCAs not getting increases, healthcare workers not getting increases, the reimbursement to nursing homes staying the same or even being reduced. So there's a lot of attention there, and I think some of these things are going to be negotiating points. Most of the targets have had increases, and there may be some carving away of some of the other numbers. Again, Health and Human Services is the single largest portion of our budget. So if there's anything that has some room in it, that might be the Health and Human Services.
Maybe I could just add to that, though. There's an important number that we're not talking about yet, and that is the fact that the projected revenues are growing by $1 billion, and that's without any of the governor's tax proposals. So thankfully our economy has started to pick up a little bit, and $1 billion of new money projected to come into the state of Minnesota. And you would think that that would be enough to fund our priorities without additional tax increases, but I do find it very hard to believe that in light of $3 billion of tax increases, that the proposals out there are to cut nursing homes and cut those folks who are most in need. I mean, that's not what we do in Minnesota. And especially with the demographic changes, with more and more of our population aging, I am very troubled by that. And I do think it's misplaced priorities. $1 billion of new money is a lot of money. And I think there's some misplaced priorities there.
Well, just if I can add, please, Barry. The fact that Representative Torkelson raised a great point, and we talked about the nursing homes in particular in all of our areas, and the service they provide and the care that they give. And there is a bipartisan bill, and both a bicameral bill that Representative Fritz is carrying in the House. I'm not sure who's carrying the Senate, but I know it's
I'm one of the Senate authors.
Okay, so you know that there's a bill that looks at really trying to help our nursing homes and the employees there. And even though there's $150 million cuts, nobody is suggesting right now that it's going to be through our nursing homes. Those, as Senator Carlson said, we're going to need to look at the whole entire budget and see what happens. I think all four of us, I just heard us say that nursing homes are a particular priority, yes, and their employees. And we're all getting to the age that maybe someday we'll be having to be taking care of those folks. Those folks take care of us as well. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a little bit there, too. I have the privilege that both my mother and my mother-in-law are in a nursing home now, in the same nursing home. So I do get to visit the nursing home regularly every weekend. And so I see how hard the folks that work there are working and the great care they give to our residents at the nursing home. We are one of 2 states in the nation that has rate equalization. Us and North Dakota. North Dakota's budget situation is significantly different than ours. I think it's one way that another way we could give a little relief to our nursing homes is by dropping rate equalization. It's controversial, but I think it would be a step in the right direction.
A viewer from Minnetonka wants to know what's happening with the presumption of joint physical custody in the event of divorce. That was a controversial topic in last year's legislative session. I can't remember, the governor may have pocket vetoed it, if I recall correctly. Anyway, what's happening with that, if anything, in this session? Who wants to take a run of that? Senator Carlson?
Well, Senator Nelson here, but I will say it's not come through any of my committees, and the amazing thing is I sit on 5 committees. I forgot to mention that. Taxes, health, education, jobs, capital investment, and it's not come through any of those committees. So to this point, I've not heard that proposal.
Anybody know anything about it?
I think what Senator Nelson just said is that that's all there is to know about it, that no one has introduced it this year. It was passed with a very substantial margin in 2012, and like you said, it was pocket vetoed. The governor was committing to have people who wanted to reintroduce it to work on it, and I must say that before I was elected this time, that was probably the #1 bill that people were coming and talking to me about. Mm-hmm. But I knew so little about it that it was not something that was my priority, and from what I understand, I think no one has been interested in reintroducing it.
Or it could be just a matter of timing as well. You know, right now we're focused on finance deadlines and the budget, and I don't know if that proposal had a financial component to it or not.
You know, Representative Tim Mahoney has carried that bill in the House for a couple of terms now, and I actually asked him recently if where that bill is, because as it progressed last year, it got. It became, I don't want to say watered down, but the percent became less and less and less of what we were talking about initially. And I asked Representative Mahoney, where it is, and he said what he indicated to me was that the governor asked people that are interested in this to get together and discuss it and talk about it and dialogue about it and study it and look at it. So I think that's where it is right now, is in a study kind of process and being looked at.
When is the deadline for introducing bills? Is that...
Well, you can introduce bills up until the last day of session.
Right, but I mean,
finance deadline was today, and policy deadline was last Friday.
Okay.
We have new rules in the House, and one of those rules restricts when we can introduce bills. We cannot introduce bills, and I forget the exact timing, the last 30 days or so of the session. So that's a change for us, and I think it's a bad change, but we do have that new rule in the House.
All right, a viewer from Columbia Heights wants to know where the panel stands on sin taxes, particularly cigarettes. This viewer thinks that they're going to go up again, and the viewer's not happy with that. So what's happening with cigarette taxes in this session? Who wants to take a run at that?
I can start with that because I'm an author on a bill to actually increase the cost on a pack of cigarettes. My bill is very different, though, than all the other ones that are out there. My bill actually increases the cost on cigarettes and then takes that increased tax money and uses it to get rid of a tax that the business property tax. So it's what I would call smarter tax policy. We tax something like cigarettes more, and even my mother-in-law, who smoked for over 60 years, realizes they don't want their children to pick this up. And it is a deadly habit. The research data shows that for every 10% increase in a pack of cigarettes, you get a 6% decline in the youth rate that picks it up, and youth are the most price sensitive, of course, and then about a 2% adults who give it up, maybe who have tried before. So I think it's a matter of smarter tax policy. In my case, it's very different than the governor's proposal, which is actually just increasing the revenue. I increase the revenue from cigarettes, but use it to buy down a tax that we all realize is making our state very uncompetitive for jobs. So I'll let you speak to the governor's proposal.
Well, raising taxes is something that no one ever wants to admit to doing or to bring out as a policy for themselves. But this is something that, as Senator Nelson said, it's a scourge on our health care. And we did get a settlement of somewhere around $6 billion in our lawsuit against the tobacco companies because of the way that they marketed cigarettes, and they are very highly addictive, and they are dangerous. They do cause cancer. So we're trying to offset the frequency of, like you say, the young people picking up the habit, and also trying to reduce the costs, eventual costs that come from smoking. And in my case, now, and you mentioned other sin taxes too. I would vote for Senator Nelson's increase because I think it's good policy to dissuade people from smoking, and I think it's unfortunate that it is a very regressive tax, but I don't think that we can use that as an excuse for not making sure that people don't get started.
And I will just say cancer is a very regressive disease.
Yes.
It's a very regressive disease.
Senator Carlson, do you think it passes? I mean, there's some form of a cigarette tax increase likely passes in this session. Any guesses on that?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah, I believe so. And I don't know when we were talking about other sin taxes. The alcohol tax has not been increased since 1987. So there's a potential there, and you know probably as well as anyone that. And I think one of the Dakota County judges said to me that about 65% of the cases that come before him have an alcohol component to them. So our justice system, our system of judicial and criminal punishment is related heavily to alcohol consumption, and it doesn't carry its own bill. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that I think alcohol pitches in a little bit more, just like cigarettes.
Representative Ward?
Well, anytime we talk about tax increases, the sin taxes are always on the table and talked about. And again, as Senator Nelson said, when some of the reasons we do that is to persuade people not to participate in habits that are not good for their health, whether it be tobacco or alcohol. Some of the proposals in the House, I know also, besides raising revenue, they also are looking at using some of the revenue for treatment programs, to put back into alcohol abuse or whatever. So I think that will be, everything will be on the table, and of course sin taxes will be on the table.
Well, I think it's likely that a tobacco tax will pass. I think it's got a lot of support on the other side of the aisle. You're right, Senator Carlson, that it is a regressive tax. Folks, it tends to be folks with fewer means that keep on smoking. So I would agree with Representative Ward that part of this should look at helping people quit smoking. Of course, the more they quit, the less revenue that comes in. So looking to this as a big revenue source, I think, is probably not what it's going to be. As you raise the price, more people quit, but also you drive some of this business away from the state of Minnesota. So it's not going to generate huge amounts of revenue, but the fewer people smoking, the better for the health of our state.
You're right, it is a declining source of revenue. So all the better reason to use it to buy down another bad tax instead of for more spending.
Senator Nelson, let's talk a little bit about the Rochester proposal. We talked about it when you were here. I think we were visiting before the program began, that I think your last appearance was on the day of the announcement of this program to expand the Mayo Clinic and facilities in the city of Rochester. And since that time, there's actually been a little controversy that's developed. There's been some discussion about how this might work and potential benefits. Let's have you talk a little bit about it, and then let's see what the rest of the panel thinks about it.
Well, it is a very exciting proposal. It's an innovative proposal, and so there does need to be a lot of discussion about this, so it's going through a lot of the committee process. But the issue is that, we all know that health care is changing dramatically in our country. And what the changes are pushing is they're driving a very few select medical centers to become these global destination medical centers. There's not many of them. There's just a few. But we're fortunate that we have one of them right here in Minnesota. In fact, Mayo is our largest private employer already. It contributes 4% of Minnesota's GDP. So it's a major player in Minnesota already. But the exciting thing is that Mayo realizes it needs to expand to become this global destination medical center, and it's willing to invest $3.5 billion of its own money to expand. And they know that type of major expansion, I see that kind of like doubling Mayo Clinic's output already. That would require some additional private investment, like more hotels, restaurants, all those things to support the patients and their families that come, and that would be another $2 billion. So you're looking about $5.5 billion of new private investment in a short amount of time, and there has to be that public infrastructure to support that, whether it's the roads and bridges or the transportation or the sewers.
And that's where the public component comes in.
That's where the public component comes in, because the public has to pay for those type of things. And in other sites, the interesting thing is, in these other places where there's a possibility for Destination Medical Center, they're in large population areas, like the Cleveland Clinic.
Johns Hopkins.
Boston, exactly. But here you've got this huge medical facility ready to basically double, but you're in a pretty small town, a little over 100,000. And that's where the public infrastructure need comes in, because the Rochester, it just can't expand. It can't put in those infrastructure needs quickly enough for Mayo to do that. So the innovative part of it, that's the need. The innovative part of it is that the public investment in that infrastructure is based on past performance. So 2011 taxes attributed to Mayo Clinic, that Mayo Clinic has paid directly or indirectly, then is a baseline, and this proposal just allows a capture, a small percent of those taxes, that increased taxes, to be captured and plowed back into the project to continue the growth. It's about 35,000 to 45,000 jobs. Over $3 billion of increased revenue to the state of Minnesota. So it looks to me like it should be a very good, it will be a good project for the state. And I think as it goes through committees and people understand this innovative financing mechanism, I think the controversy will go away, and I think we'll have a lot of supporters.
This is a form of tax increment financing.
It is kind of like a new form of tax increment financing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Senator Carlson?
Well, we certainly would not want to hinder the Mayo Clinic from expanding. That's a given, I think. I have a little concern about what the financing is going to be used for, because the infrastructure in Rochester does need a lot of investment, and I think that was even clear before this project. And so I have not looked at it in any detail. I do have a fear that what it does is it does open up a lot of private entities to come and get more funding. And of course, everyone compares it to a stadium. I can't be a hypocrite, because I've just dropped a bill for tax increment financing in Eagan. I'm also supportive of the 3M plan that they have, which is innovative financing also, because 3M is my
Maybe that's
career
Maplewood,
alma mater.
right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, I'm concerned that we pick and choose. I don't like to pick winners and losers, but also I think even these are very good investments. They're good for the state. They're good for jobs. They're good for construction jobs. But each of these, and I'll throw in the Mall of America, each of them has a time period where they'll stop, and so that we have to be sure that they're needed and that they will pay back. And I think the Mayo Clinic is one of them that will pay back. So my tendency is to support it.
Representative Ward?
Well, I have heard the proposal at the Capital Investment Committee in the House, and I just think that it would be wonderful to have a Mayo satellite up in central Minnesota, say Brainerd or Baxter or somewhere like that. I think that would be a wonderful place to...
Telemedicine's on the way.
Yeah. So, we're state legislators, and we have a duty to our districts, but we also have a duty to our state citizens and to our state operation. And Mayo is an asset to this state that we need to make sure, just like the Mall of America or just like any other facility in the Metrodome, the Excel, whatever. Those kind of venues help all of us, quite frankly. And maybe sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own districts that we lose sight of the big perspective here. And so, I listened to closely to the Mayo presentation in the capital investment, and Senator, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was something about, they are asking obviously for some significant financing, but they also are saying, we can give you some guarantees on some revenue sources, some jobs, some that will help the whole state of Minnesota. And so with that in mind, and you're right, if in fact we don't allow them to become a global destination center, they could go somewhere else and become that global destination center, and they are being approached for that. So. I just think it's critical that we make sure that the assets that we have in the state of Minnesota, wherever they are, do just that, become Minnesota assets.
Representative Ward, you're exactly right. There are guarantees, and it's not just a promise.
Right.
It's based on past performance.
Right.
And that's where it's just capturing a portion of the increment in the revenue growth that has already occurred. And that's the innovative part of it. It's not a promise going forward. It's the money's already been generated. We're just going to allow a portion of that to be captured and putting it back in for more investment, for more growth. So you're exactly right.
Representative Torkelson?
Well, the Mayo proposal is an intriguing proposal. It's a brand new approach, one we haven't seen before. I have to say that I'm still evaluating it myself. I'm a big Mayo supporter. A couple things, though. One, it's not well supported by the House tax chair at this point in time, and that's a major hurdle that will have to be overcome. Also, the Mayo isn't just Rochester. The Mayo is a system, not only here in Minnesota, but in other locations in the country. So far, they haven't talked much about the system. I'm very concerned about the system. I have a Mayo facility in Springfield that is going through some growing pains, or I don't know, growing pains isn't the right term, but some pain. They lost some doctors, and they're looking to get those doctors replaced. Similar situation has occurred in Fairmont. My hometown of St. James is a Mayo facility, and that's actually going pretty well right now. And Mankato has a big Mayo facility. I think I would like to hear more about this proposal working for the whole system, rather than just kind of confined to Rochester. But it's an intriguing proposal. I think it's one that deserves our attention. I'm not sure it's going to make it out of the starting blocks this year, but like a lot of ideas at the legislature, sometimes it takes a little time for it to cook and become something that people actually embrace.
Well, I will say that, as you mentioned, there are other sites, and I don't think Mayo is going to roll up and go to Jacksonville or Scottsdale, but they certainly will be investing. And maybe choosing where that, and certainly as any business, choosing where that investment goes. And as I said, healthcare is changing so rapidly, I don't think we have time to wait. We do not have time to wait. And but you're exactly right. I do believe it will be good for the entire healthcare system. And this new method, this new healthcare is really pushing toward these very highly specialized destination sites, and then making sure that we have got great primary care available for every person, so people get the right care at the right place at the right time, and I'm hoping we can do that.
I just want to note here, it's not a question for the panel. We're not asking the panel to deal with Mayo's provision of medical services. They're a private entity from that standpoint, but we do have a viewer from Springfield who notes that I'll just say some unhappiness with the Mayo operation there. So there's apparently some controversy there. A viewer from Bemidji wants to know what is the status of the transmission line that is to come from Canada to Beltrami to northeast Minnesota. This is not something we've discussed before. Anybody know anything about that? The word Bemidji is mentioned, so I look your direction.
Well, and I'm Brainerd. Some people oftentimes get that confused, but
you're close. You're the closest one we're going to find to Bemidji.
But I've got to say that I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about it.
Could this be the Keystone pipeline?
I don't know.
No, they're talking about transmission lines.
Oh, transmission lines.
Transmission.
Okay, all right.
All right. Viewer from Alexandria wants to know what happened to the school aid lunch bill that was in the legislature last week that dealt with allowing kids to eat no matter what. Anybody know anything about that?
That came before my committee. I think you're on that committee too, aren't you, Senator Carlson?
Yeah, and I'm not sure where it was forwarded to. I believe I think it went on to education finance.
We
after
can say it
us.
wasn't in our, it was not in our potential omnibus bill.
Correct.
But the question on that was, we currently have free and reduced lunch in our schools. That's free and reduced lunch. And this particular proposal said, well, if you qualify for free and reduced, it's all going to be free. So there won't be any more reduced lunches, which is the 40% fee. And there were reportedly some districts that were not allowing students to eat if they couldn't bring their 40 cents, and some reports of actually throwing food out in front of children. I can't imagine a responsible adult doing that. I did check with the districts in my school districts in my district, and they provide a sack lunch. So there's no child that would be going hungry because they didn't bring or couldn't bring 40 cents.
Anything else on that one? We'll move on. Viewer from New Brighton wants to talk about the wolves. We had, and this actually was sparked. We had a fairly extensive discussion last week, so I'm just going to finish up that discussion by noting that this viewer is concerned about efforts to end the wolf hunt. Doesn't think that we should do that, as I'm reading the question anyway. And the specific question is, why does Minnesota consider wolves endangered when Canada has thousands of them that can cross the Rainy River at will? Apparently the wolves aren't checking in with border control. But in any event, anybody have some predictions on what's going to happen on the wolf issue? Should we start with you, Representative Torkelson?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We have a healthy wolf population here in Minnesota. We're waiting right now for numbers from a wolf survey, population survey. We expect them anytime. That'll tell us a little more accurately what the population is like. But we, I believe, still have the largest population of wolves in the lower 48 states. The speed with which the quota was filled with this last year's wolf hunt indicates to me that there's a lot of wolves out there, or the hunt wouldn't have gone that quickly. Wolves are not easy to hunt, I assure you. The truth is, we've been controlling wolves in this state for a long time. We've had federal and state sharpshooters and trappers in the state controlling the wolf population for years, taking hundreds of wolves that are problem wolves in the state. The population is healthy. I think they should be managed as we manage all of the other game species in the state. To me, it makes a lot more sense to have people that want to do this for sport paying the state for the privilege of being able to harvest a wolf, rather than us taking money out of our coffers to hire folks to do the same work.
And I'll just add that I also supported the wolf hunt and trapping season as well. And I just read recently, many of us know that we have a declining moose population in the state of Minnesota, and the DNR, is studying that and looking at that and has a moratorium on the moose hunt right now. And I just read recently or saw recently that perhaps the wolf population has been an indicator, a factor in the declining moose population. To me, that makes some sense. I mean, to me, that really does make some sense, especially with the winters we've been having. And so, I agree with Representative Torkelson that, not only, I think we have a significant number in the state, but, and they also, the wolves also have been a problem for our agriculture business as well, our farms, and so while they've had the state sharpshooters, out taking care of problem wolves or whatever, also the farmers themselves have had to take some methods to protect their livestock as well. So I am not for the extended moratorium now. We've had this discussion. We've had a moratorium on it for years and years and years, and so I think what we did was appropriate.
I agree with Representative Ward and Representative Torkelson. Basically, it's a little premature, I think, to be looking at a moratorium when we don't even have the data back yet from the first wolf hunt. So I'd say it's certainly premature and possibly not even necessary.
Senator Carlson, any thoughts on that?
Well, as a suburban legislator,
you don't have a lot of wolf hunting going on at the Pilot Knob there? Or,
no. One of the things that I've heard, though, is that wolves and coyotes are not compatible. and that wherever you see one, you don't see the other. And we have a lot of coyotes in Egan and Apple Valley and Burnsville. So I don't think I have to worry about the wolf population, but there's a lot of emotion that surrounds it too. In my area, it's mainly emotion about wolves and about wildlife, and I think most people would like to see the data, the count yet before they make a decision on it.
All right, very good. Controversial topic that we've discussed off and on since we reconvened our program here in January is the subject of frack mining and silicon sand, as it relates to Minnesota, the silica sand mining. Viewers from New Brighton and Montrose and other places have raised this issue, and as you might expect, they have a variety of perspectives. Our viewer in New Brighton is concerned about all the chemicals that are put into the ground during the sand mining process. This viewer from Montrose wants to know why the sand is necessary, and other viewers view this as a private sector jobs program and important for those reasons, and think that there's relatively little controversy. Been discussion about moratoriums. Who wants to take a run at that issue and see where it stands today?
Well, all those comments are correct. I think all those viewers have correct views.
We have great viewers.
You have great viewers.
They are well informed about public policy.
So I think the issue is we need, again, we're back to data and facts. And I'm glad that at least one of the bills is looking at having the state provide to the townships, it's usually townships that need to make these decisions, these zoning decisions or permit decisions, having the state either through the Environmental Quality Board in the Senate, I think the House bill might have a different board in mind, providing information on the safety issues, the water, the air quality, the safety, the roads. How are we going to take care of the wear and tear on the roads? I think that's the easiest one to fix, actually, through a wheelage tax or a usage tax or something like a taconite tax, only a silica sand tax. But I think it's that data looking at how can this be done safely? Well, can it be done safely? You know, what are the concerns and how can we do it safely? And there is a real economic, argument here. And I want to know, can this be done safely? And I'm hopeful, though, that as we get that information from the EQB or whichever board about how can frac sanding impact human health, how can it impact the environment, how can it be done safely, then, of course, I really would want the local units of government to be able to make that decision. I'm very fearful of the state making a unilateral decision about frac mining for the entire state. And I will just say that my part of the state, southeast Minnesota, is very different than the northern part of the state. Certainly there's some, air and water, and we certainly need all those safety issues taken care of. But what's right with like a statewide EIS for one part of the state might not fit for southeast Minnesota. And it's interesting. I was in North Dakota with a legislator who was telling us about the great growth in North Dakota and because of the fracking there. And I remember thinking, I wish there were that kind of a resource in Minnesota. And then, of course, the silica sand came up. And so I'm hopeful that we can find a way, I think we can, to capture and harness this resource and do it in a safe way and also be able to capture the economic benefits. I will say silica sand, there's a window of time on this as well. Because it's so expensive, that's what's used to frack open the shale deposits. The public research is already looking at, private research is already looking at artificial propellants, I think they're called, because the silica is so expensive. So we do have a window of time here where the silica sand that's been mined for generations is very valuable. And I hope we get our science up to speed quickly enough to find out the safety issues and how to proceed.
Senator Carlson?
Well, we might have some mixture in industries here a little bit in that frac sand mining does not use chemicals. That's primarily it's a matter of mining the sand and then classifying the size. And actually that same sand is used for glass too. So it's we have 2 glass plants that are near Savage that are using a lot of this of the mined sand. But having said that, they're probably the largest danger from frack mining is the air quality around the mine. And there's just like any industry, there are responsible miners and business owners, and there are those that are not responsible. And that's what we need to be sure that we visit the regulations, because the dust that comes off of the mining operations is very seriously dangerous to people when you inhale the sand. And then if we're talking about the use of fracking to either
Which is where the chemicals come in.
Yeah, that's where the chemicals come in. And that's used for oil and for natural gas. And there's a lot of water and chemicals, especially used for natural gas, that the user of the businesses that use it have been exempted from reporting what those chemicals are. There's a lot of them that are proprietary, and there's no responsibility or accountability that's being generated there for the people that are using this. And there's been a lot of water contamination, water level contamination, aquifers that have been contaminated. And I think what we need to do is, and being an engineer, I think we can solve that. We just have to be sure that we put it as our priority to solve it. But this has been used for many years, and it's now generated, and I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, where it generated an entirely new estimate of the amount of natural gas that's available in the country.
Yes, we're now talking hundreds of years, actually.
Yeah.
It is pretty remarkable.
That's right. Yeah.
Representative Ward, your
Well,
thoughts?
I don't know if there's much more to say on this. I think the two senators pretty much said it all. But I agree with both of them. Senator Nelson, you said that one part of the state is much different than another part of the state, and you're correct. I mean, when we do some different mining in southern Minnesota, it's going to be a little different mining than we do in the northern Minnesota that we're used to, open pit mining and things of such or whatever. And the bottom line is, as both of you indicated, we have to have a balance. We have to have a balance that protects our environment. I mean, we're blessed with one of the most beautiful natural states in the nation, I think, with our waters, with our wood, with everything, and we've got to protect that environment while we also move forward with economic development and mining or whatever it is. So I just think we need to make sure that we have a balanced approach. That that we also have the regulatory measures, and I know that Representative Fabian last year worked on streamlining regulations along with the governor and permitting and things as such. And so we just need to make sure that we have those regulatory measures in place, but also a balanced approach.
Well, I'd just like to reemphasize that the chemical processes are not part of sand mining here in Minnesota. They're part of fracking that's happening in South Dakota and other places in this country. This sand is a valuable asset. We've been mining it for decades and using it for a variety of things. The frack use is a new use, but it's something that we can export from this state and export profitably. I think the real issue is infrastructure. We don't have the adequate infrastructure in the areas where these mines are being located right now, and we need to make those investments in infrastructure so that we can properly and efficiently move this product out of the state. I'm a farmer. I know what good soil is like that you can grow a crop in, and I know what sand is like because I've got some on my farm. And if I could sell my sand, I'd be happy to sell it. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to add on to that a little bit. When we talk about the green space or the saving some of our environment, frac sand is in a lot of places. It's under the Ford plant. It's along the Mississippi River. It's under Shepherd Road. And that's been mined for years. The area of the Ford plant is littered with tunnels underneath it because the Ford plant was the original location for Ford windows. They made the glass there for all Ford cars at one time, and they mined an incredible amount of sand out of that area. And that's glass sand, which is frac sand.
Yeah, interesting. Does a moratorium pass? What do you think, Senator? A moratorium on frac sand, on taking out sand. That's one of the things we've been kicking around here over the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've not seen the moratorium described, but I tend to not support it.
I would not support that moratorium either, but I do know in one of the committees last week, a bill passed out of one of our Senate committees, not one of the ones I sit on, though, that had a 5-year moratorium. But I'm hopeful. There are several silica sand bills in the Senate, and I'm certainly hoping the one that's based on research is the one that's going to move forward.
Is Senator Schmidt the kind of the expert in the Senate on that?
He is, and he has several bills.
Okay.
Several of the silica sand bills.
All right, a viewer from St. Croix County wants to know, what about medical marijuana? We had a medical marijuana bill here in the legislature a few years ago. This viewer thinks it's a good idea, thinks farmers should be allowed to grow hemp. What's the legislature doing about this? Representative Torkelson, you're our farmer, we'll ask you.
Hemp over there.
Well, I am not a fan of medical marijuana. I think if we did utilize it here in the state, it should be handled like any prescription drug, very tightly controlled and prescribed by doctors. I don't think we're even going to go there. Now, the hemp issue is a different issue. Hemp is a plant that you can grow, and it has many industrial uses. The Canadians had us to a reception just a couple of weeks ago, and I happened to talk to one of the Canadian ministers who has hemp farmers in his district, and they're doing very well. Phyllis Kahn, one of my colleagues from the other side of the aisle, has a bill to allow hemp to be grown here in the state. Actually, I'm a co-author on that bill. Yeah, she's brought
You're a
this
co-author
up,
on that
I am a co-author on that bill. Now, that's different than medical marijuana, dramatically different. But we're always looking for additional crops that we can grow here in Minnesota. I think we could do it, but it's not likely to happen.
Any other thoughts on medical marijuana?
Well, I have a friend who is alive today because of medical marijuana. He's, because one of the uses of it is to prevent the gag reflex, and if we have a pill that prevents gag reflex, you have to be able to get it down. And in his case, he had throat cancer, and he went through an experimental treatment where he was under chemotherapy every day. And the only way that he could eat anything was to have marijuana, and it was prescribed for him. It was done under, oversight. And he'll tell you that he is alive today because of it, and he is cancer-free now.
Well, I think that's going to be our concluding word. I want to thank our panel for your participation tonight. Thank our viewers for sending in so many great questions. I want to remind you again that next week we're going to have Myron Franz with us, the Commissioner of Revenue, and I remind you to send your questions in before next Thursday so we make sure we have them and we can have a useful dialogue. I want to thank all of you. Good night. See you next week.
Thank you.
There's much more about your legislators online at pioneer.org. Find out more about the history of the program, who's been a guest, and watch all our past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can also get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.